Hello, Julie here and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm sharing an art journal page that I created. I started it out with one thought in mind and ended up changing my idea midstream. So I hope you enjoy watching the process, and if you do enjoy my video, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel, or if you're already a subscriber, leave me a like or a comment. It helps my YouTube channel to grow, so thank you for that. Anyway, here we go with the process. I'm going to create a page that goes into this album. It's one I made myself. I've used watercolour paper and I just hold it together with these 4 jump rings. I cut my watercolour paper to 8 3/4 by 8 1/2, and I put the 4 holes down the side. Now I only create the page on one side of the page, and on the back I always write the products that I've used on that particular project, so that if I am ever wondering what I've done or what I've used for a particular thing, I can always go back and check that out. I think each of these pages has a video for it, so I will link in the description box below to any of the pages that I do have a video to, if you want to go and have a look at those. But this page will go just on these rings at the back of this album. To create my focal points for this layout, I'm using my Woodware Bubble Mini Baubles stamp. I'm going to use my Tonic Studios stamping platform to stamp my baubles. I'm going to use all 3 different shapes. I'm going to use the Versafine Onyx Black ink to stamp them, and they're new stamps, so I'm using my platform so that if there's a problem I can restamp and know that they'll work out in the same spot. Once I've stamped them, I'm going to then use some clear embossing powder and my heat tool and heat emboss them. I did wipe my embossing buddy over this white cardstock before I stamped. I use this same process to stamp 12 baubles. To colour my baubles, I'm going to use my Distress inks and my Distress Oxide inks. I'm going to start by using a lighter colour and then a darker of the same colour to do the shading. I'm only going to colour the circles inside of the baubles. So, okay, the colours that I used, and these will all be listed in the description box below if you want to know more detail about them. So the yellow that I used were, okay, the lighter one is Scattered Straw and the darker one is Mustard Seed. Both of those are Distress inks. The orange that I used were Distress ink Carved Pumpkin and Distress ink Ripe Persimmon. I do 2 red ones. One is using Festive Berries Distress ink and Candied Apple Distress ink, and the other one is using Barn Door Distress ink and Fired Brick Distress ink. I do 2 pink ones. One is Victorian Velvet Distress ink and Picked Raspberry Distress ink, and the other one is Tattered Rose Distress Oxide and Spun Sugar Distress ink. Now I do 3 green ones. So one is Distress Oxide in Cracked Pistachio and Distress ink Bundled Sage. The other one, or one of the other ones, is Mowed Lawn Distress ink and Pine Needles Distress ink. And the last green one is Peeled Paint Distress ink and Twisted Citron Distressed ink. I have one mauve one, which is Shaded Lilac, and that Shaded Lilac is the Distress Oxide, and the Dusty Concord is the Distress ink, and a couple of blue ones. One is Blueprint Sketch Distress Oxide and Salty Ocean Distress Oxide, and the other one is Chipped Sapphire Distress Ink and Faded Jeans Distress Ink. Now you can see I'm using a water brush to apply the colour. I simply squish my ink pad onto that acrylic block and then use my water brush to apply the colour. I apply first colour, the lightest colour to all of the circles, and then I use the darker colour and the water brush just to shade some of the darker colour onto the left hand side of the circle. I go ahead and do that with all 12 of the baubles. Once I'd finished colouring them all, I fussy cut them and inked around the edge of each one with a black ink cube. I used Archival Jet Black ink because I didn't want it to run later on. So now I'm going to start colouring my background. I'm going to use acrylic paints, and these particular acrylic paints are from my ceramic days. So they're a Duncan brand, but they are still just a normal acrylic paint. This particular colour is called Sea Breeze Turquoise. I'm going to use a sponge to pounce my paint on. So this gives me a texture, a spongy sort of texture to the background. I'm going to actually apply a couple of colours. The lighter one is the Sea Breeze Turquoise, as I said, and then I'm going to use a darker one which is called Southwest Teal, and I'm going to sponge those on, sort of overlapping and blending together. I also bring in a darker green called Jade Green just for a few highlights here and there. You can see I'm just applying layers and blending and just playing around with the colour until I'm happy with the background. Now I'm going to use my Kaisercraft Lattice stencil and some avocado acrylic paint to just apply some of the acrylic paint through the stencil with my sponge. The idea that I was going with at this stage was I'm looking to get like a Christmas tree background, so a tree if you looked at it really close up. So the pouncing paint was to give the texture of the tree, and then these lines are to sort of give the look of branches and stems. I always like to add some texture to my background, so I'm going to do that now using this Crafters Workshop 6-inch stencil called Mini Labyrinth and my Montmartre modelling paste. I use this quite a lot. It dries white, or you can colour it if you want to, but at this particular layout I want it to be white because I want to lift that background a little bit. So I'm going to use my palette knife and just apply some of that modelling paste through the stencil, just randomly. So now I decided to place my baubles onto my tree. So the tree is the whole background and the baubles are supposed to hang on there, and it's supposed to, well, the baubles are supposed to be the feature. But when I actually went about placing them, I realised that the baubles were too small for the size of the background. So I had to have a change of plans, and so that's what I did. I decided to add some more interest to the background, so I'm using my Uniquely Creative's Wavy Words stamp and Archival Jet Black ink to stamp randomly onto the background. Once again, I'm using the archival ink because once it dries it won't move around when I add any liquid to the top of this page. So because my original idea was not going to work, I decided to use the baubles to make the shape of a Christmas tree, because this is, after all, a Christmas layout. So I played around until I was happy with the layout, that it looked how I wanted it to look, and then I used my heavy gel medium in gloss to attach each of those baubles onto my page. I also gave the whole page a coat of the gel medium because that helps to seal everything, make it waterproof, and to give me the ability to shade on top once it's dry. I did have to be very careful when I was applying the gel medium, because the Distress and Oxide inks that the baubles are coloured with, of course, is not waterproof, so that can smudge quite easily. I set that aside to dry overnight and then came back with my Stabilo oil pencil in black and my water brush to shade around each one of those baubles. To do this, I simply draw around the edge with the pencil and then use my pointy water brush to spread that black ink out. Now, if you've used a oil pencil before, this is exactly what they're for. You can get them in all different colours. I have one in black and one in white. I have to admit I don't use a white one very often. And this just makes your embellishment or your whatever it is that you're highlighting stand out from the background and helps it to become part of the page instead of just some shapes stuck on. So I need something for my tree to sit on and a star for the top. So I've found some gold cardstock and I'm going to just cut a piece out, trace around my bauble so that it can sit up flush with the bottom of the new Christmas tree. And then I'm going to use a punch to punch a gold star. Now this punch, I have had it for ages and ages and ages, and I think it's called an Imagination star punch. So that's imagination with an E. So I've had it for so long, I'm pretty sure it's not available anymore, so I won't be able to link it in the bottom, but I'm sure you've got a star punch that could do the same job. I used my art glitter glue to attach these two pieces to my page, and then I used my Stabilo oil pencil to once again shade around those two pieces so that they look like they belong with the rest of the tree. I also use my Stabilo pencil and my water brush to create a bit of shading underneath the tree. For a little extra detail to the star in the pot, I'm going to use this paint marker. It's a black paint marker, super fine, and it's by Sony, S-O-N-I, yeah, extra fine paint marker, and I'm just going to draw faux stitching around the edge of the star and the planter pot. I wanted some shine to my page, so I'm going to use my Glossy Accents and I'm going to give each one of those little circles in the baubles a nice thick coat, and that will help them shine and look like baubles on the bauble tree. I cut my title from black cardstock using this Kaisercraft alphabet die. I have just called this page Merry. It could be Merry Christmas, it could be Merry and Bright, it could be whatever, but I'm just going to put Merry on there and leave the rest open to interpretation. I'm going to use my reverse tweezers and my art glitter glue to attach my title. I'm going to try to get it as straight as I can. My final step is to add a black border using the watered down black acrylic paint I keep in this fine liner bottle. So I just do a couple of squibbly borders around the page. And that finishes off my page for today. So I hope you've enjoyed watching my video, and I'd really love it if you would leave me a comment or a like, or even subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And this is probably going to be my last post for this year, so I'll be back next year. I think I've got one to go on the 1st for the Mystical Scrapbooks design team, so I'll see you then.